Good afternoon. Today is March the 10th, 2026, and it's 3:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Ayamarcano, and I'm recording this video from my home at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And it is 300 feet away from the house of Mr. Robert Mueller, the former director of the FBI, and that is relevant to the conversation. So today, I just want to record a few things that happened just this morning, because I went to the Fort Bend County courts, courts at law, they call them, to observe the trial of Mr. KP George, which I'm, as a citizen, I'm curious to see how justice works for a person like him. So I went there today, and a series of things happened that, I just want to memorialize them here, to record them. The feeling I get after this experience this morning is, I don't know, it's, I don't know even what how to describe it. But it's disbelief, I guess, right? Like it's unreal, really, to watch these things happen, unfold. I mean, the whole situation, right, was unreal. So, I want to memorialize it. And I'm gonna go chronologically, okay? Because some things were more shocking to see than others, but to not go back and forth in time, I'll try to walk through it chronologically, right? So the first thing that happened was when I arrived. Actually, let's back up. On my way there, nothing really strange. The usual, right? Like, they were following me, but they were following me differently today, at a certain distance, right? And mostly from ahead, like tracking me ahead, which they always do, but like today was mostly that. So I think they see risk, right? They see there is a situation, something is happening that, they are acting differently today. So I drive there, and when I get there, I try to find parking. There's no parking. All the spaces are taken. And there is a man on the parking lot with a professional camera, as if he's a news reporter. 1 second. And he's, with the camera, right? So I'm thinking, when I see this situation, I think, and I think this was the fact, right? I think, well, this is a super high profile trial, right? Because there's news people in the parking lot waiting for this, almost a head of a state, right? Almost. You would expect to see that, if it was a president or something, right? But apparently for KP George, that that was the impression they wanted to give me, right? And this cameraman was positioned in the parking lot where I usually park when I go to the court. So I see the situation. Put yourself in my shoes, right? I see the parking lot full of cars. There's no one single space, and there's multiple cars circling around the parking lot, waiting for somebody to come out. I'm talking about, I don't know, 10 cars, right? So if it's a queue, that means that I have to wait for 11 cars to come out, and the parking lot has maybe 30 spaces, right? It's impossible, right? I'm never going to find a parking spot in there. The only choice would be, there is a multi-level parking garage that is covered, right? But of course, I'm not going to park there, because I know that it's going to give them a perfect opportunity to do whatever they want to the vehicle, right? So I always park the car in open spaces, because they're visible from the sky. And if they do something to the car, somebody could be watching, right? So that deters them. So I'm not going to park it in that structure. So anyhow, I start circling around, and I lose like 25 minutes in this, right? And I drive, like, there's different, like, the parking spaces in this court are not a single parking lot, but there are multiple parking lots, and they're small, but there's several of them. So I start going through all the parking lots, and every time I go to a parking lot, when I'm about to come in, a car comes in before me, right? To basically get in the queue before I do. So if somebody comes out, that person is going to take the space, right? So basically, I mean, I could interpret this as, well, it's just a busy morning, right? But given the circumstances that they are in, given the, how do I say this? How critical this particular trial is for them. I mean, this could be the unraveling of a multi-decade criminal enterprise, right? So they're not going to leave anything to chance here, right? So, I'm seeing this and I'm thinking, well, obviously they want me to give up, right? To abandon and go back home because I couldn't find parking space. But I don't do that. I insist. Eventually, I found one. I think that is kind of a police station or a penitentiary. I don't know exactly what that structure is, but I found one in an adjacent structure after like 25 minutes. And I parked there, right? Now, all this time I'm thinking, all these people cannot possibly be going to KP George trial for logic reasons. Like, I think the occupancy in that courtroom is 121 people. And I'm seeing here almost 1,000 cars easily, right? So it's not possible that 1,000 people are going to go into the same courtroom, right? So these people have to have other businesses in the court. And if you want to see it in another dimension, if all these people are going to the KP George trial, what are all the judges doing today, right? They don't have any clients. They don't have any cases to review. It cannot be, right? So the logic tells me that some of the people should be coming out, but nobody's coming out, right? Anyhow, this situation sustains for 25 minutes, and eventually I find a parking spot. I park and I go in. When I go in, I go through security, and the first person I see in the security line from the police officers that are working the security is Officer Flores. But this time, it's a real one. I had a note to mention this before, but I always forget. Officer Flores is an important, I mean, he's relevant because there was one instance, I can't recall exactly what was happening. It was something in the conflict that was high tension, right? I think it was like one of the hearings on September 9th or September 11th. I can't recall. I mean, the hearings were Telfair, right? And they were trying to steal, I think it was, I don't remember. There was an occasion in which they attempted to lock me out of the car of the Suburban in front of Robert Mueller's house to get to impound the vehicle, right? To have, I imagine, right? That was the route, to have Phil Denning come out and impound the vehicle because it was running and locked with the key inside. Of course, I never left the vehicle with the key inside, so it didn't happen. But as they hit the vehicle with something, and when I got out to inspect to see, because I thought I could have hit an animal or something, when I go out of the car, the doors locked immediately, right? So that day or the day after, the day before, so there was something in that court. And this officer inspected my keys. Like, he made a point to look at my keys, and they were looking for the UV keys. The thing that they wanted to steal really was the UV key, because with that, they could delete something in my account, the videos, the YouTube videos, something like the books. They could destroy evidence. So they at that time, they were attempting to steal the UV key. And the officer Flores at the security line stopped me and inspected the keys and spread them flat in the table. And he only did that with my keys and with nobody else's keys. And during all the times that I've gone to all these courts before that day, nobody has ever inspected my keys, right? So it was the only time. And then this thing with Phil Denning, in front of Robert Mueller's house happened, right? And Robert Mueller he was the director of the FBI. I mean, this kind of sequence that I'm describing of locking somebody out of the vehicle to have it impound is the kind of things that the FBI would do, right? To get a criminal, right? But in this case, they're trying to get me. So anyhow, but after I gave a demo and I mentioned that incident with Officer Flores. And after that, the next time I went to the court, what they did is that they brought another Officer Flores. I call him the fake Flores. So this was another Officer Flores that was older, was like at least 20 or 30 years older than the OG Officer Flores. And I also made a comment about that. I made a joke, like, I think they brought that fake Officer Flores. I mean, not fake, but like that other Officer Flores. So if there's an investigation, right, there would be confusion, and they wouldn't be able to pinpoint which was the one that spread the keys and did this thing in combination with Robert Mueller, basically, right? So it's really a deception to protect Robert Mueller in case of an investigation. But anyhow, today there was the original Officer Flores at the security, right? I went in and he didn't inspect my keys, he didn't touch my things, nothing. He just let me in. I do this I made the point of looking at his badge, and when I did that, because he was like standing in a way, right, that his badge was not visible to me, like the name tag, right? But I make the point in front of him, like I looked at his name tag, right? So I'm giving him the message. I know who you are, and I want to make sure that you are you, right? And when I do that, he immediately responds by looking at me and locking eyes with me, right? Like he acknowledged me, right, at that moment. Before that, he wasn't really acknowledging. But when I did that, he switched his demeanor. So anyhow, but he knows that I know, and I know that he knows, right? So then I go in, right? So now at that moment, when I cross security and I go through that glass door, I enter a world of mystery. Like, this was a new world to me. And I have to tell you, remember, I've been in this court multiple times because Morgan Heibner, William Kyle Adams, Josh Telfair, and Troy Pickett have been harassing me, and Judge Bell have been harassing me with this court for almost a year at this point. I've been, like, what I'm going to describe to you is not an uninformed observation. Like, I've been in this court and I've interacted with multiple people in this court over a period of a year, right? Like, this feels like a second home to me at this point. But today, the environment seemed very different. I don't know exactly how to describe it, like if I had to put a word to it, but it felt weird. Right? Like this was like a different place today. And I'm going to give you concrete observations of things that I saw, right? So the first thing that I've noticed is that so they have these screens where they usually have the cases, right? I mean, every time that I've gone to this court, in those screens, they're full with cases. Well, actually, the first thing that I have to tell you, every time I go to this court, before I go to security, I have to make a line. There's always a line of people. I don't know, half a dozen people wait, right? And you have to wait until everybody gets their belt off, and I got there at 8:50 or something like that. So the worst possible time, because everybody's trying to get through at the last minute to get to the court at 9 a.m. when the sessions start, right? When the court starts the proceedings. But yeah, today it was empty. There was no line, right? I could just walk in like it was, midnight. Then I go through the doors and I see the screens where the cases are. The screen is empty. There's no cases. Right? They also have similar screens. There's one next to the door, but there's also multiple screens everywhere. Like almost next to every courtroom, there is a small TV. Like I don't know, it probably will be like 19 inches or something like that. And they have the same application with the cases. I mean, the docket of the day and who's going to which courtroom, right? In all the courtrooms that I walked through, and I walked through a lot of them on purpose, all of them, the screens were either off or they were on, but they were empty. They had no cases, 0 cases, right? And you can think, well, it's a glitch, right? Like something happened with the system today, and there's no cases today. But I have to tell you, I'm observing that there's no line in the entrance, right? Now, which is also contradictory with the situation in the parking lot that I just described. I mean, if there's 1,000 cars outside to the point that you cannot find a parking spot, where are all these people? I mean, when did they all get in, right? And why is nobody getting in at the same time as me? So, this seemed to me something that is weird, right? I mean, I can elucidate, I can hypothesize what could be the case. If you ask me, I think they've rescheduled the case, right? Something is happening. There's an investigation. Somebody got interviewed. I don't know the gravity of the situation for them, but I imagine something is happening and they see risk and they reschedule the case, right? Because I also I tried to go into a few of the courtrooms and there was no people sitting on the galleries. Like, I don't know where all these people from these cars were, to be honest with you. Sorry. So that was weird, right? Then I go to the courtroom of the 458 court, right? And I'm seeing this cameraman outside, right? Uh, like basically positioning himself like he's waiting for the money shot, right? Like he's waiting for KP George to come out in handcuffs, something like that, right? Like I'm talking about like he's positioned maybe 200 feet away with a telescopic lens and a professional video camera, not a photographic camera, a video camera. Which, if you think about it, doesn't make sense, right? Because he's not going to get with that microphone any audio of that entrance that far. But that's what he did, right? I think he was an actor, really, uh, an actor that doesn't really know how the camera works, because that setup doesn't make sense unless KP George parked his car in that parking lot. That's the only right. But I imagine he's the executive, he's the CEO of the county. There are criminal charges. He's not going to come driving a car and parking in a parking lot because, he could be harassed by the press, right? By journalists. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But I get to the courtroom and I'm expecting to see a sea of people in there because, well, the parking lot full of cars. The screen shut off. When I see the screens being off, I thought, well, maybe it's a privacy measure, right? So people don't know exactly where KP George is. I mean, if you're having a high-profile case, I imagine this is a measure you could take, right? To protect the person, right? And to protect the process and to protect the jurors and all that, right? So I still give them the benefit of the doubt, right? When I see the screens being off. And I get to the courtroom and I'm expected to see a sea of people in there. And I open the door, and when I look around, there's 3 people, like me. I mean, I would be the fourth people. Like, this thing is completely empty. There's no judge. The judge is not sitting on the bench. There's one person, like where the court coordinator sits, but that's it, right? And there is 2 gentlemen, one in the door and one in the gallery, and there is a lady and me, right? That's it. So I say, well, great. There's a space, right? But I sit down, and here a series of things started happening, right? So there was a gentleman by the door, and he was wearing a blue suit. Oh, well, no, sorry. Let me back. I'm trying to go chronologically, but because I'm doing this by memory, right? Not person. But as I walk in, the first person I see is KP George. He's on the right gallery, on the first place, like on the first row as you enter the courtroom. And he's wearing a black suit, red tie. He looked a little bit nervous, to be honest. But if you ask me, I think he was faking it a little bit. Like, it didn't feel genuine to me. He was he was in company of a lady, and the lady did seem stressed out. Like, I think she was generally stressed out. But I think KP George was, probably. I mean, maybe he was stressed out, but it felt to me that it wasn't really. I mean, I think he was exaggerating it a little bit. Right? But anyhow, I enter the courtroom. I look at him. He doesn't acknowledge my presence. Like, it's like I don't exist. He doesn't know who I am, right? Which I understand. Like, that's exactly what he has to do, right? He can't give me any hints that he knows who I am. So I said, fine. So I sit down. I mean, I said, better. It's better that way, right? Like, if you don't know who I am, there's not gonna be any friction here, right? So I sit down. Oh, before that, as I'm coming in, the lawyers are coming out, right? So it looked like I imagine the judge was there. And I say that because later the judge came back to pick up her purse. So she was there and she left her purse for some reason. And then she went somewhere else, and then she came back and picked it up. But I'll tell you more about that later. But as I'm entering the courtroom, the attorneys and the prosecutor, I think it's the special prosecutor. I think that is, because I saw some pictures of him on Google. I think that is Brian Weiss, with C, W-I-C, the special prosecutor. And the attorney, one of the attorneys. I see them. And I mean, this, I don't, I mean, this is something I have to try to understand, like what I'm going to tell you. I don't know. I don't know how to even articulate it, right? But it's something. It's kind of I don't know what I don't know. It's not a feeling, but it's like a perception, right? Like what I'm trying to say is that I've noticed through all the last few years, right, in different occasions, this network have put me in close proximity of very important people, right, for different reasons. Sometimes to steal technology, sometimes to get access to my home. Like cases in point, President Lionel Fernandez, right? Elon Musk, right? When I met him in person, he called me to review my code, quote unquote, in person in San Francisco. Uh, there was one instance in which they put me in close proximity of the mayor of Houston. Um, and there's been others, right? But in those occasions, I've noticed, and I don't know what is the, I don't know if this is a normal human dynamic, right, in society. I don't know. Like, to be honest, I don't know the answer to this. I need to understand this, right? I need to research this and understand it. But I haven't done it, and I'm not going to say that I know the answer, right? But it's something that I've noticed, right? In these situations, these individuals seem to have a common characteristic. And I don't know how to describe it really, but the characteristic is it's a feeling that this is a powerful individual. Like you see, and it's not the way the individual carries themselves. It's not that. It's the way the group of people surrounding the individual behave when the individual is next to them. It's a group dynamic. It's not the individual. Uh, and to be honest, I don't know how to describe it. Like I don't know exactly what is the dynamic at play, but when I walk into a crowd, and if there is somebody powerful, I can tell like that person is powerful, right? And it's not because the person is doing a display of power. It's because of the way the people immediately surrounding the person behave. They behave differently. Now, I don't know if I'm saying this because it could be a social dynamic, right? But it also could be a TTP. It could be that these people are acting in this way deliberately to mark the importance of these people, so everybody in the network knows this is an important person that is walking through here, right? Could be a marker. I don't know, right? Or could be just a normal social dynamic. But to be honest, right, like I don't know. When the mayor of Houston walked next to me, that was at the Galleria. I didn't know who he was. I mean, I don't follow politics. This was maybe 4 years, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I don't know. This was like in 2019. Um, and the only reason I knew that he was the mayor is because I've noticed this odd behavior of the people that were walking next to him, right? Um, it made me wonder. It made me wonder who's that person. And I asked somebody, like a security guard or somebody, who's that person? And then he told me, oh, that's the mayor. Um, but anyhow, I'm telling you this because I got the same feeling today when that attorney walked out of the room. I mean, that is a powerful individual. I don't know. I don't know exactly. I have to research. Like, I don't know exactly where his power comes from, but I got the exact same feeling as when I met, uh, President Leonel Fernandez, something like that. And I didn't talk to him today or anything. Like, I didn't interact with him. I was standing maybe. I mean, I was walking in one direction and he was coming out on the other direction. Um, and we were apart, maybe 3 feet apart. Right? But just by, I don't know, I could sense that this was a powerful person, right? So I think that is a defense attorney, one of the defense attorneys, right? But anyhow, they came out of the room and I never saw them again. I sat down in the gallery and I was there for more than an hour, right? But then what happened during that hour is very interesting, right? So there is a gentleman sitting behind me, and we make a small conversation, right? And we even shook it, like he shook my hand and asked me for my name, and like we spoke, right? And he's wearing a press credential, like so. I start asking him, how did he get it? Because I'm trying to get one, but the judge hasn't replied to my request. And then he tells me that he doesn't know that an organization got it for him, and that he thinks that only if I'm an accredited member of the press, I can get one. Like that's what he said, right? Which I know is not true, but that's what he thought. Um, But then there was a gentleman at the door. He was wearing a black suit, sorry, a blue suit, and he had a pin on his lapel. Um, and he mentioned that he was with the district attorney's office. He was like talking to this other person that is from the press that was sitting behind me, and like this person is asking the guy that is standing next to the door, what's going to happen today, something like that, right? And he starts giving an elaborate description of what's likely to happen today. And if I replay the conversation to you, like it was pretty funny. If I replay the conversation to you, it would be something like, the guy behind me is asking him, how boring is this going to be today? And then the other person replies, oh, this is going to be very boring. There's going to be a lot of boring emotions and a lot of boring pre-trial things. Nothing sexy is really going to happen today. There's going to be no action. This is going to be a very boring, boring morning, a very long. Maybe we'll have to wait here all morning, and then we won't see a person until the afternoon. Like the whole conversation, I'm not exaggerating. They said the word boring at least among the two of them, at least 8 times. Right. Every question was phrased as, how boring this is going to be. Right. And I thought, well, maybe they don't want me to be here, right? Like maybe they want me to get bored and leave, right? During all this time that I'm there just, taking notes, right, of what they're saying and what I'm observing, right? And during all this time, all the people in the room had their phones out doing something with the phone. But the interesting thing is that all of them were pointing their phones at my face, right? Like, like when they do this thing, like they're like writing a text message, but like the camera is pointing at my face, right? The 3 of them, right? I don't know. It just felt weird. Right? I don't know if it were just trying to make me uncomfortable and also tell me how boring this day was going to be. So I give up and I leave. Right? I imagine. Right? That's probably it. I mean, it's a bit of harassment and then a bit of psychological warfare. Right? Because again, I know they don't want me there because I know that I sent all of them the evidences of the crimes of the clerk. And if they don't even talk about it, I will be a witness to them ignoring that evidence, right? They can't have that happen. So anyhow, in this conversation of how boring the day was going to be, the man from the district attorney's office says that they're downstairs giving questionnaires to the jury. And that we have to wait for them to come back. We cannot go there, he says. It's only for the attorneys. Which to me seems odd because, arguably, the jury selection process, I would argue, is one of the most important and sensitive parts of the trial because you could compromise the entire trial by selecting the right jurors, right? So if anything has to be public and open to scrutiny, it has to be the jury selection. Why are they doing this downstairs where nobody can come in, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems to me like a fatal design flaw of this trial, right? But remember, as I'm coming in, they are coming out, right? I mean, it felt like they were going to have the trial, or they were going to do the jury selection in the courtroom where it should be, I guess, right? But they decided to move it. It felt like way. It felt that way. It felt like like they decided to move it. Now, here I have to pause because this makes me think, why move it at the last minute? I mean, they could have moved it before, or even when I was in the parking lot, right? I mean, why this coincidence that they're moving exactly at the time that I'm arriving? This is just me speculating, but it could be a way to keep me in the wrong room, right? If they, maybe the room wasn't even secret, as the man suggested, the man at the door. Maybe I could have gone into that room, but he's telling me that I cannot go, right? And then if I don't go, the judge and the attorneys and everybody, they're not, they have no responsibility of what I didn't do, right? I mean, if I was misinformed by this man, that would be nobody's fault. So it could be a move to keep me trapped in the wrong courtroom, right? So I cannot observe the real process, right? Where the process is really taking place. So I don't know. It felt that way, right? Yes, because if they hadn't done it before I arrived, I would see the courtroom empty, right? And then I would try to find the right place and I would get there, right? So, keeping these people in the room, maybe, right? It was a way of telling me, yes, this is the right place, right? A way to keep me there, right? Well, anyhow, to be honest, I thought of this being there, right? But my objective is not really, I think, if you ask me, right, my intuition tells me, my intuition and my informed knowledge, right, of the situation have been dealt with them and doing this for years, right? My intuition tells me that at this point, which I reported them to the OFAC, like there must be people watching this, right? And they must be watching that they're moving the courtroom because I arrived, right? And there was nobody else. Why else they would they do this, right? So, like somebody must be watching what they're doing, right? I imagine, right? I hope. So, I think that's good enough for me, right? Like if they keep incriminating themselves, that's good, right? I'm also winning in that situation. But anyhow, I refuse to leave, right? I'm staying there because, precisely because of the same reason. If they keep the process out of the courtroom for hours and the DOJ or the OFAC or whoever, right, is watching that, they must know that that is improper. There's a courtroom for a reason. They cannot have this trial in the park, right? They cannot be moving the trial. Please, like there's a reason why there's this area designated for the trials, right? Because it's set up with cameras, with microphones, with security, logistics. People know where the courtroom is. They can't be moving the trial around because that denies the public the right to see what's happening, right? That is a violation of the public trust on itself. And it's a manipulation of the process. So, the longer I can keep them out of the courtroom, the better, right? So that's my position. And I stayed there for almost 2 hours. But yeah, so the interactions between all of them in that space of 2 hours was, all the questions were framed from the angle of how boring this is going to be, right? This is not going to be anything exciting. You're not going to see any dramatic thing to hear today. There's nothing to see here, right? Like this is just like administrative stuff today. The real trial is tomorrow. That's what the man from the district attorney's office said. Right? So it was funny, right? And at the same time, they all, chatting with their phones, pointing their cameras at me, including the man that was in the parking lot. The cameraman at the end came into the courtroom with his phone, and he was pointing the phone at me all the time, like the entire time. I think it was, psychological warfare because they know that I know what they do with their phones. Right? They know that I know that they have the capability, the Chinese have the capability of activating the cameras remotely. So, they're all pointing the cameras at me at the same time. They think that's going to make me leave, right? But I don't leave. Now, the next thing happened. So there was one of the persons there, one of the people there it seemed like a professional photographer. Like he had two huge cameras, those photographic cameras like to photograph sports, things like that, right? Like with the telephoto lenses. And he goes talk to the cameraman that was in the parking lot. And he sits in a bench that is kind of on the side next to me, right? And he starts showing him the camera. But when he does that, the photo lens points straight at my face all this time, right? Like I got the impression that he was taking photos of me. Right? That's how it felt. He was pointing that camera at me. He could have, like he could have shown whatever he was showing to the other person. He had 360 degrees on this. Well, let's say 180. He had 180 degrees horizontally that he could have pointed the camera to, and he had, I don't know, another, I don't know, not 100, but 100 degrees, right? That he could have pointed the camera vertically. If you think about this, all the possible angles that he could have taken in the two axes, and the camera ended up always all this time being pointed at my face, right? So I think it's the same. It was a way to like put psychological pressure on me, so I leave, right? But I didn't leave. So anyhow, after 2 hours, right, when I thought, this is enough time for the DOJ or the FBI or whoever is watching them to see what they're doing, right? That they're moving the venue of the trial to manipulate the process, right? So the public cannot be informed of what they're doing. I said, well, I think I accomplished my goal here, right? So I stood up and I left, but I didn't really leave the courtroom. Here, I moved on to execute a move that I've been saving for a long time. Let me tell you something. It's about the index number 8 in the docket of the 387th court, and I'm going to show you the document in a second. So this particular document is on the case 25-DCV-328122, and it's the index number 8, the document I want to talk about. So, I know that they manipulated this document, right? I mean, pure logic, right? And I mentioned this in multiple demos, and it's because I know this because the index number 7 is missing from the docket. If you go to the docket, you will see the index number 7 disappeared. And that was supposedly the temporary restraining order that Morgan Heibner and Tina Simon filed, right, in April 9, 2025, right, almost a year ago. And if you are watching this saga, you will know by this point that I have technology to detect the tricks they do when they don't file the documents and when they alter them. Right? I have technology to do those things. And you will also know that multiple times I've gone to the clerk's office to obtain copies of the document. And I've discovered serious instances of fraud that way. Case in example, the fraudulent document that Morgan Heibner filed on October 10, 2025, that said notice of entry, temporary orders, but in reality, it was a notice of hearing. And they used that document to make Justice, I'm not going to call him Justice because I think it's honestly, they used that to make Terry Adams dismiss my petition for writ of mandamus on the first court of appeals, that fraudulent document, right? But what I'm trying to tell you is that I know that if I go to the clerk office and get a copy of the document, I can discover the fraud. I've done this multiple times before. But I've never, during all this year, requested a copy of the document index number 8. I have never done it. And I invite you to think why, right? Ask yourself that question. Why I haven't asked for a copy of the index number 8, despite knowing that this is the most important document that there could be. And despite knowing that this is the proof that they kidnapped the child. I'll tell you the reason. I haven't said the reason because if I said the reason before, it wouldn't have any effect, right? It's a weapon that I had. The reason is that if I had requested a copy before, they would have mitigated the problem. The problem that this creates for them, right? They would have explained it away. So my strategy was to wait until a point where I could, think that they could have been possibly interviewed by authorities, right? The idea here is, let me tell you what is the working theory that I have. And this, by the way, I want to phrase this more as a question to the informant. Tell me if this is what they did, right? Tell me if what they did was they filed one document on April 9th. They filed the other document on April 10th, which is the real temporary restraining order that really strips you from my parental rights because I'm delusional, quote unquote. And they got both of them signed, and they really filed the other one, the real one, right? And it's been filed all this time. But they served me the draft, the one from the 9th, right? That is not the real filed order. So, but I have a copy of that because they sent me that draft, right? I know that that's the timestamp doesn't match the signature, right? So I know that that's not the real order, and I've known that for a year. But they serve me that draft signed, but with the wrong timestamp, right? So if I go and ask for a copy, right? So this is the problem. I'm trying to convey to you what is the situation, the explosive situation that I could create, and I could have created the situation anytime in the last year, but I intentionally delayed it. I intentionally decided to not do it until today. So if I go and ask for a copy of the index number 8, which is the temporary restraining order, right? they will be faced with a choice. Do they give me the real temporary order that strips me from my parental rights? And then I will have a copy of the two different documents, right? I will have two different versions of the document. And I could go to the FBI and show them, look, these people gave me two different orders in two different dates, and it's supposedly the same order, right? That is proof of fraud. Or do they switch it, right, in the docket and give me a copy identical to the one that they gave me in April, right? Which doesn't have, the timestamp, and I'll show you in a second what I mean. But the timestamp shows that it's a fraudulent document, right? But they will have to face that choice. Now, if I had done this 6 months ago, they would have just flipped, right? And then give me the copy and leave that in the archive, right? Like, leave that in the document, right? The fraudulent document, right? Because that they can explain as a, clerical error. We jumped the gun and we didn't really file it, something like that, right? But by waiting, right, to a moment like this, in which I already have reported them to the OFAC, to the FBI, even to the CIA. I sent the CIA a letter the other day. The IRS, the DOJ, right? So many ways. There's patent applications, right? Describing how the judges are kidnapping children. There's so many ways that they could be investigated, right? I imagine at this point, somebody must have asked somebody the question, right? And they must have already committed to the position that I'm crazy. And they probably, I cannot know this because I cannot see, what the DOJ is doing. But I imagine they already showed to the DOJ or to somebody, to some authority, a copy of the temporary restraining order that says that they are stripping me from my parental rights because I'm delusional, right? So they say, no, this is just a disgruntled parent that lost his child, and he is making all these accusations because he's really crazy. But by doing so, they're committing to that position. They already told, probably, this is what I think. This is why I make this. I committed to this position myself today, right? I think they probably already committed themselves with authorities to the position that I'm crazy. And they showed them already the wrong document. The real document, the one that said, you're crazy, we're going to take the child, right? As a protective order to protect the child, which is the temporary restraining order, right? But now, today I go to the court and KP George is on trial, right? For money laundering, 2 counts. And George Fair had committed with Troy Pickett and Morgan Heibner financial crimes in the court using the court. And I go to the clerk's office and I ask for the copy, right? I could have asked for the copy in the last year, right? But what I want to tell you is that waiting is the master stroke here, because if they already, I don't know if this is going to play the way I planned it, right? But if they already did this and they committed with the authorities to that position and showed them that real TRO that they had hearing, right? I go to the clerk office today and I ask for a copy. So now what they're going to do, are they going to give me the real TRO finally, right? That they never served to me? And if they do that, then I have 2 versions of the document in my hands, right? I can prove that they are committing fraud. Or are they going to switch it? If they switch it, then they already committed to the DOJ or to whoever interviewed them to the position that I'm crazy, and that the real TRO is the real TRO. You see what I'm saying? They cannot have it both ways. They cannot lie to the 2 sides. They cannot lie to the authorities and to me at the same time, because they're contradictory conditions, right? And they cannot meet the 2 conditions at the same time, right? So they're trapped. So that's what I did, right? So as I'm walking to the clerk's office, I have all this already planned. I know that I'm going to do this today, right? But I'm trying to make them believe that. Let me tell you why. Because I also want to understand, as I'm doing this, it's an experiment. I want to understand at what point they switch it, right? Because I wanted to have confidence or not confidence on what I'm telling, right? Let me tell you why. If they haven't shown the document to the authorities yet, right, the real TRO that they have had hearing, and when I say hearing, I say that because if you go to the docket and you click on download, the document is not downloadable. You cannot download it. And because they never serve it to me, I have no way of getting a copy. The only way is going there in person and asking the clerk for the copy, right? That's why I have to go in person. So if assume for a second that they have not shown the real TRO to the authorities. Well, let's back up for a second. One, the first question you have to ask yourself is, which is the document that has been live, which version? Because there's two versions, right? So there's the version that is not really a temporary restraining order. It's a notice of hearing. It's the same TTP that Morgan used, right? So it's the fraudulent title document. And by the way, this is a pattern of racketeering, right? Like they're doing this with every single order, right? But anyhow, they have two versions, right? The one that is not really a TRO, it's a notice of hearing, and they have the real TRO, right? So the first question you have to ask yourself is, which is the document, which is the version that has been live in the docket the last year? This is a hypothesis. I imagine that the one that has been live is the real TRO. The reason I say that is because if there's an investigation, the first thing that the authorities are going to do is look into the docket. They cannot have the fraudulent version of the document live for a year because anybody could see it. Anybody with access. I mean, I cannot see it because I cannot download it, but the FBI can easily get it, right? I don't know, authorities with higher access than even them can get a copy of the document. So they can risk having the fraudulent version of the document live. So I think, or even, right, if there's an investigation and they have to say that I'm crazy, but then they go to the docket and they don't see anything that suggests that I'm crazy, nobody's going to believe them. They have to have something in there that suggests at least that I am crazy. So my theory is that the document that has been live in the docket for the last year is the real TRO, only that I cannot download it. I cannot see it because they didn't serve it to me and I cannot download it. So that's the first question, but I think that's the answer, right? The live document was the real TRO. So when the authorities come knocking on the door, they show them the TRO, right? They act like nothing is happening here. This is normal procedure, and this guy is really crazy. This is a schizophrenic person, right? And they show the TRO. Now they have committed themselves to that position with authorities. They cannot change the story now. And now I go to the clerk's office, right? I mean, I back up for a second. I go to the court, right, for the KP George trial. That's why I waited until I had another reason to go there. Because if I go there without any explanation, they will think, oh, he's coming for the document. And they're going to switch it while I'm there, right? Give me a copy and then switch it back, right? I mean, they can switch these documents like they control the clerk has the password, right? So that's why I waited for a situation like this in which it's likely that they were already at least interviewed or asked the question, right, about these documents. And secondly, where I had another opportunity, another reason to go to the court. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going there to get evidence, right? And today was the perfect moment for both, right? So that's why I did this today. But the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, so as I'm walking, and this is the experiment I was running, right? This is why I was walking. I don't know if authorities look at that footage, you will see that I was walking around in that floor for like half an hour, right? I was just giving them time. That's what I was doing, stalling them, right? Like giving them opportunity to flip it because I wanted to know if they would flip it before I arrived to the clerk's office, right? I was giving them all the chances to flip it. Why? Because this is important information for me to know. If they wait until the last second to flip it, it means that they're already in trouble. That what I'm telling you is the case. They already committed to the position with the DOJ or with somebody, right? Somebody asked them the question and they showed the real TRO that they had been hiding for a year. They show it to them. They already committed. And they don't want to flip it unless it's necessary, right? That's my read of the situation, right? So that's why I was walking around, giving them all the opportunities in the world to flip it. How would I know? Easy. Flipping the document takes time. I mean, it takes at least a couple of minutes. It's not something that they can do instantly, right? It's not a button they have under the desk, right? They have to go to a computer, log in, find the docket, find the document, replace it, make sure they do it right, that nobody's watching, right? That the cameras are off. Like, they must have a TTP, how to do it, right? But whatever it is not something that can be done in 1 second. It must take at least 2 or 3 minutes, right? Minimum, I would say. So that makes it detectable, right? My plan was give them all the time that I could, right? All the time in the world to flip it, and then start walking to the clerk's office slowly. If they let me get the document, the copy that I request without any friction, it means that they have not been approached by the DOJ or the OFAC or anybody. But if they put friction in the process, if they make it difficult for me, it's likely to mean that they are already in trouble and they already committed to the position of showing the authorities the real TRO, which makes this an impossible situation for them because now they have to give me the real TRO, which makes me have the proof of the fraud, or they have to flip it, risking that the authorities might be watching. Because if they already were interviewed, I imagine they must have the thought in their heads that, in their minds, that, well, maybe they didn't buy your story and maybe they're watching, right? So that's why I gave them all the time in the world. When I approached the clerk's office, a series of anomalous situations started happening. The first thing was the kiosk. There's a kiosk where you press a button and you get a ticket. And there were two people in the room and they had tickets. And the people are in this room. I've been in this room multiple times, as you can tell. I can tell you the turnaround time here is probably 5 minutes. So these people must have arrived 5 minutes before me. There were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people behind the glass, right? So I mean, they were well staffed. There was only one person. I mean, 2 people, but sorry, they were together. So there were 6 attendants and only one customer waiting. So they were well staffed, right? The person had a ticket in his hands, which means that he got that ticket probably 5 minutes before I did, right? Before I got there. But I go to the kiosk doesn't give me a ticket. I tried 3 times, nothing. It doesn't print, right? I talk to somebody behind the glass, and she says that she's gonna come around. She comes around. She tries. I tell her, listen, I already tried 3 times. It doesn't work. The kiosk is broken. And she said, oh, well, I have to call the company of the kiosk. So sit down and I'll make a call. Imagine that. So she's saying that the clerk office is not going to work today until this magical person comes from somewhere to fix the kiosk, right? And she said the company. It's not like I'm going to call IT. No, she made it sound like she's going to call a third-party company outside of the building, right? I mean, I'm going to be there sitting for an hour, right? So I said, listen, there is at least 5 people unoccupied here. Can anybody help? I just want to print one document. I'm not asking for the world here. I just want to print a copy of the document. She said, well, yes, I'm gonna talk to somebody, so they help. And then she goes behind the glass, right? As she goes behind the glass, she engages in the conversation with somebody, and they start talking about something mundane, right? Like, I'm not gonna, disclose their conversation, but like, it's not something, and they're waiting. It's their fault. The kiosk is broken, and she is distracting herself with this mundane conversation. They're stalling, right? Like, what they're doing is making me lose time. And this is because they're flipping the document, right? Like, what they're doing at that time, I believe, is, flipping it, right? Well, first of all, they're panicking, right? They have to make a decision whether to flip it or not, because it's not, as you see, it's a chess game, right? Like, and I think it's, kind of heads I win, tail you lose, right? But, they're debating probably, what to do. Asking for approval. I don't know, right? But they keep stalling, right? Now, on the people that are there on the other side of the glass, there's a lady, African American, young, probably in her 20s. And here I have to tell you, right? When I tell you these things about things that I perceive, I have to tell you, like, I don't know. I don't know. This is if you ask me, what is my greatest skill? I think it is perception. Like, I can perceive situations. I don't know. It's I can tell when somebody is upset, when somebody is, this lady is clearly upset. Like, she, I mean, I don't want to say that she hates me, right? But she could not hide, her feelings towards me being in that room, right? So I don't know. I don't know if she is the one that this Alaya that made the. So I'm going to show you the document, right? So the clerk that stamp the fraudulent document. This fraudulently titled document that was made in a way to look like a TRO was stamped by a clerk by the name of Alaya Hudson, I think. I don't know if that's her, right? It could be. I mean, the name sounds like it could be her. I don't know. I mean, by the density, right? But anyhow, she was clearly not happy that I was there, right? And she was like making it obvious that she could not help me. Like she started like handling papers and doing things and like, so anyhow, I waited, right? And they stalled me there for maybe 5 minutes, right? Then somebody helps me and she asked me what I want. I asked if she could print this document. She printed it and I got the copy. And I also asked for the index number 7 that is missing. Of course, it's missing because this is the index number 7. They cannot have it duplicated, right? Because then it's obvious what they're doing. But she prints the document and she gives me a copy. When she gives me a copy, I mean, I didn't analyze it. I haven't run it through the pipeline. I'll run it to see if the fingerprint matches what I have. I mean, to see if they change a character or a sentence or something, right? But I just look at it very quickly while I'm there, and I see, like they're basically throwing Suleima under the bus, right? Because they're giving me something that looks very similar to what they gave me in April, which is not really a temporary restraining order. It's a notice of hearing. So that means that she has no cover for why she took the child and secreted the child for 50 days. They're throwing her under the bus. They are putting her in a situation where she could be charged with kidnapping. Right? So I saw, they're throwing her under the bus, obviously, right? But of course, I'm in knowledge of all, because I designed this strategy this way, right? And I know that they have to make this decision, right? And they cannot give me the real TRO because then I will have complete proof. I will have the two halves of the proof, right? But anyhow, so they choose to give me the fake TRO, right? Like there's not really a TRO. And I'm going to show you the document in a second, and we'll go through it together and analyze it, so you see what I mean. But that means throwing her under the bus, right? Which is dangerous because of all the people, the one that could put them all in jail is her, right? So it also creates an explosive situation for them, right? But anyhow, that was the sequence. So I think this thing of stalling me with the kiosk being broken, I mean, all the times that I've been there, that kiosk has never been broken. The man next before me had the ticket, right? It got broken when I got there. But the most interesting part to me is that they decided to do this because they could have flipped the document before I arrived to the clerk's office. It's on the 3rd floor, right? And they saw me. I was driving around for 30 minutes in the parking lot. And then I was walking very close to the clerk's office for half an hour. I mean, they had plenty of opportunities. I gave them plenty of opportunities to flip it, and they didn't. To me, that means that they didn't want to flip it if it was not, the last resort, like if it was not necessary, right? But when they saw that I entered the clerk's office, it was obvious what I was going to do, right? Because this is the mystery document, right? And this is the nuclear weapon. And by the way, this is the reason why I hadn't even created a folder for Richard Bell in the, I have folders for everybody, right? All these actors in the Google Cloud bucket, except Richard Bell, because I didn't want to give them any reasons to believe that I was going to go after Bell. I mean, that I was going to pursue collecting evidence to hold him accountable, or to help, authorities bring him to justice. But I think today, right, the situation, I mean, it was, I think, right, if I was going to pull the trigger on this, it was today, right? It was the best. It was like a perfect storm in a way, right? Because they're doing this. I mean, just the presence of KP George in that courtroom and that trial brings heat to them, right? They have to be concerned about, could somebody be watching and monitoring what is happening here today? Just because KP George is on trial, like maybe not even about this guy or the kidnapped child, but just about KP George, right? But if anybody's watching and they see us, them, right? See us flipping the documents, we are gonna get in trouble, right? So anyhow, they didn't do it until I put a foot on the door. And then, they trigger all these things where basically to create delays as I was there, and I believe it was because they were really flipping the document. And one thing interesting that happened is that the clerk, I mean, the top person at the clerk's office, this Beverly McGrew Walker, right, which I sued in federal court and I'll reported to the DOJ, to the OFAC, everything. She walked in front of me, right? I've never seen her in the last year, and I've been in this office and in this court multiple times. I've never seen her. Today I saw her, right? So she walked and she got in one of the back rooms as this was happening, right? The delays. As they were clearing the delay and stalling me there, she walked by and I saw it, right? So I don't know, maybe, they needed the password or something, right? To be able to do this. The supervisory approval, right? To flip the document. I don't know. It's a theory. But anyhow, I imagine this must be auditable, right? And visible by authorities. So I think, it's probably a good thing, right? Anyhow, let's go through the document real quickly, because I think yes. So let me show you a few things. Okay. So the first thing you have to see is this timestamp over here, right? So you see it was timestamped on April 9th, 2025 at 5:26 p.m. So that means after the court is closed. So this has to be filed electronically. Okay. Also, let me show you this. This is a certified copy, what I'm showing you, right? So you can see here that this is certified and by the clerk's office, right? Sorry. I think I made a mistake. Yes. Let me share my screen with you again. Give me just 1 second, okay? I need to do something. No, actually, that's okay. Just sorry. I'm having a bit of trouble sharing it again. No, this. Okay. Okay. So it's a certified document, okay, what I'm showing you. So the first thing I want to show you is the timestamp, right? So you look at the timestamp here, and it says, the April 9 at 5:26 p.m. Okay, when the court is closed, that means it was filed electronically. So look at this, right? The other thing is the title. It says temporary restraining order and order setting hearing, right? So it says that it's a temporary restraining order, right? And an order setting hearing. It's the same as the other GTP of October 10th, right? Like it's a document with the title altered in a way that makes you think that this is an order, but what it's really saying, it is ordered that the above matter is set before the court for 9 a.m. on May 15th. So 45 days in the future, right? Or I don't know, 30 something days in the future. So what they're doing is setting a hearing, really. This is not an order. And then if you go to the second page, you will see that it says on the first point, the very first point on the second page, it says this. Let me show you. The purpose of the hearing is to determine, while the case is pending, the standing restraining order. Standing. So the standing, and this is a concept I need to elaborate on because if you're watching this from another place, you may not be familiar with this concept. At least in Texas, this means a standing restraining order is an order that this court, judges of this court, signed years ago, right? I think it was signed in 2021, and it's an order that applies to every divorce. So basically, it's kind of to put the rules of the game, right, while the divorce is happening. So this is to protect the children, right? So it says things like, you should not harass the other parent, you should not go knock on the other person, you should not secret the child, which is funny because they secreted the child for 50 days, right? So they violated the standing order signed by Judge Bell. Judge Bell signed this standing order in 2021. And again, this is not an order against me. This is an order that applies to every divorce case in Fort Bend County. But you see, this document is not a temporary restraining order. This document is really saying the rules that apply to everybody apply to you. Why do they have to say that, right? This is just a trick, right? To justify putting in the title restraining order. So to do these rules, right? The deception, the manipulation of the record, right? The tampering with the record. But I want to be clear that this is not a temporary restraining order. This is just a standing order, right? And what this is saying is that the purpose is going to be to determine whether in that future hearing, this is not ordering anything yet. This is saying that in that future hearing, in May 15, I think it says, the goal is to determine whether this standing order is going to stay, right? It's going to continue. But this is not ordering anything, right? So that's the second thing that you have to be aware of. But then it gets more interesting, right? Then if you go to the signature page, right, you'll see that it says that it was signed on April 11, 2025 at 8:15 a.m. And here's the signature of the presiding judge. And in the docket, it says RB, the initials of Judge Richard Bell. So this is supposed to be Richard Bell, right? But the interesting thing here is that it's signed 2 days after it was filed, right? It was filed on the 9th and then signed on the 11th, which is improper. They have to file the signed order. So we all know what is that the judge signed, right? So how can the signature be here if it was filed 2 days before, right? This makes no sense. And then if you go to the other page and see the certificate of service, you will see that the certificate of service also says that it was served on the 9th, right? April 9th. So it was served before it was signed. So what they served was the unsigned order. It should have been the unsigned order, right? And this is important, it was only served to them, to Morgan Heibner and Tina Simon, who works with Morgan Heibner. My name is not in that sheet of paper, right? So this was never served to me. And it was never served even to them after it was signed. And it was not filed because if it was filed, there should be a stamp. Let me show you where. This stamp on the first page of the supposed order. This is not an order. This is a notice of hearing. But here there should be another stamp or replacing this stamp saying, 4/11 or 4/12 or 4/16, some date after the signature. Because I guess what I'm trying to say is that how do you explain that if this was filed on 4/9 when the signature did not physically exist on the page, in this electronic version of the document, there is a signature? How is that possible? The only explanation is that they tampered with the document, right? They put the signature there either digitally or they replaced, I don't know how they did it, but it makes no sense that if the document is filed on 4/9, the signature appears there after it was filed. And if it is that it was refiled after it was signed, that's the other explanation, then why is that there is no stamp from the clerk saying filed? This says clearly here filed, right? The key word, the important word there is filed. That's the verb, right? The document was filed. So what they do is that they put here in the document at the bottom these two things to confuse you, right? To make you think that this is not filed. This is routed, right? This is different. So this is just to create confusion, right? But if you look at this, right, it was routed to the clerk supposedly, right, on 4/11, but it was not filed because if it had been filed, it has to have a stamp that says that it was filed with a date of 4/11 or posterior to that, which is not the case. And not only that, if it was filed, it needs to be served. They cannot file a document, an order, especially a temporary restraining order, taking the child of somebody and not serve the order. I mean, that's just crazy. How can you take the child of somebody and not even tell them that you're taking the child, right? So you see, this document is fraudulent for so many reasons. Like the title is deceptive, it's not really a temporary restraining order, the timestamps don't match, the signature is 2 days after the filing date. There is no filing date or filing stamp after it was signed. There is no service after it was signed. I mean, there's at least 6 or 7 counts of fraud in this document, right? But they had to give it to me today because otherwise I would have the real TRO. And because I have a copy of the draft. This is just a draft, but what you're seeing this is a draft that is make look like an order. But because I have a copy of it from before, if they give me the real TRO today, I will have the two pieces that I need to go to the FBI and show the proof of fraud, right? So they can't give me the real TRO. So they have to give me this. That's why they have to flip it today at the last possible minute. But anyhow, it's in here. Now I have the certified copy from the clerk. And if they did show the real TRO to the authorities, this contradicts their version. And this means also that they lied to the authorities, right? Which is another crime. I mean, if you're investigated by the DOJ, which has, is the body that investigates these crimes, right? And they're asking you a direct question and you intentionally lie to them, I'm guessing, right? That has to be another crime. Probably more serious because you're covering it up, right? You're committing you're defrauding the authorities to cover up these other crimes, right? So I don't know. It seems to be like it's really game over for Bell and Telfair and Morgan Hagner and Pickett and this, at least this ring, right, that they have. And so the clerk, right? So this particular deputy of the clerk is, Aliha, I don't know how to pronounce it, Aliha Hudson, right? So that is interesting. So again, I'm going to give you the name of the document in case any journalist or anybody, is looking at this. You can, get a copy or write your representative in Congress to, to say that these things are happening in our courts. Anyhow, the case number is 25-DCV-328122, and this is the docket number index 7. This is the document that we're talking about. See, and even in the certification of the clerk, it says this is a temporary restraining order. See, and it's not true. Like you can read the document, this is not restraining anything, right? It's just setting a hearing to consider all these things in the future. Yeah. And you see, it's signed by Morgan Hagner from the Adams law firm, right? And that is important because they also did these other rules on October 10, which is the same exact technique, but with a different fraudulent document. In combination with Terry Adams, dismissed my petition for writ of mandamus to deny me the right to review all this abuse and fraud, right? To have a higher court review all this abuse and fraud. So anyhow, so I think with that, I'm going to close this demo. I'm just going to try to think if... oh, yes, there's only one more thing. So after I got the copy of this document from the clerk, I go to the, to kind of where the escalators are on the 3rd floor. And there is a huge window where I can see the parking lot. Before I got into the clerk's office, the parking lot was full, right? With all these cars, as I described before. After I got the document, right before I got into the clerk's office, all the cars in the parking lot started leaving. Like the parking lot became like 50% empty in a matter of 5 minutes. I don't know where all these people came from to pick up these cars, to be honest. I couldn't see them exiting the building through the window. I mean, through the window, I could not see them walking out of the building. They came from somewhere else. But it's strange, right? Because remember, the court is basically a desert. Sorry, mispronunciation. But the court this morning was basically, the entire building, right, was a desert. Like there was nobody in there. The monitors were blank. It looked like there were no cases being heard today, right? But yet the parking lot was full, right? But then as this thing is unfolding, the parking lot starts out of the sorting. At the same time, people taking a lot of the cars out of the parking lot. So I don't know. It really feels from my advantageous point of view or observation that they're getting in trouble, right? That something is happening to them, and they're panicking. Really, it feels that way. It feels like they are panicking. It doesn't feel like this is a coordinated effort anymore. It feels more like this is, every man for themselves kind of situation, right? Like, try to serve yourself. We have a saying in Spanish that is like, I don't know if there's something like this in Spanish, like in English. Like, I don't know if there's a translation for this joke, but we have a saying that we say, el último que apague la luz. Basically, the last one to leave, turn off the lights. Like, everybody run, right? It feels that way, basically. But anyhow, I'll close this demo for now. I thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.